Breaking. Iran and Saudi Arabia agreed to reestablish diplomatic relations and reopen embassies after years of tensions. The two countries released a joint communique with China on the deal. What the fuck? Whoa. Wait, what? That's actually no shot. What? Okay, it's done. It's over. That's the most insane. What the? This is the most insane thing I've ever read, dude. Top G. Top G. He did it again. He fucking did it again. Top G. He fucking did it again. Everyone's out there sending Jared Kushner to the Middle East, and all he's done is try to sell his shit properties to whatever Saudi oil baron he can find. Meanwhile, Top G, what's he doing? Well, he's not making mistakes. He doesn't care about the shit properties of Jared Kushner. He hasn't made tensions in the Middle East way worse. He's made it better. He's made it joint communique and turned Iran and Saudi Arabia, which are currently in a heated battle, proxy war, if you will, in Yemen, where Saudi Arabia is doing genocide in Yemen. Two warring nations and historic enemies into potential allies. Where are the Americans now? Where are the Americans now? Oh. Iran claims to have discovered one of the world's largest lithium deposits. Turns out China may have an interest in allowing Iran to participate in the global economy in more meaningful ways, as they likely will try to maintain the entirety of all the natural minerals and the natural resources necessary to make these batteries. The United States of America, on the other hand, has really lost the game to China. Top G. What a diplomatic win. Anyway. I mean, this is wild. I'm wondering if this is like PR, but it's the AP writing it. You know what I mean? This is like going to be the least favorable assessment of the situation, and even they are making it. Here's what I'll say. Okay? The fact that, yeah, I'm going to cover this in a second too. The fact that the Associated Press is writing about this in positive terms means it's like a legit thing. Because normally when I see stuff like this, when I see like a global hegemonic, superpower, okay? When they do something like this, it's like the Jerusalem Accords or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like America does shit like this. We don't even think about the impact and how damaging and how devastating it is, and the media covers it in a positive light regardless. They'll be like, oh, Jared Kushner really brokered peace in the Middle East with the Gulf nation states. One of the greatest examples is like the Gulf nation states and Israel having a joint alliance, right? Like that is not surprising. That's not unique. These are all America's client states pretty much, okay? These are all some of our main weapons manufacturing locations, right? I mean, not weapons manufacturing locations, but like these are some of the clients of the military-industrial complex getting together and saying, yeah, fuck Palestine, who gives a shit? And fuck Iran, who gives a shit? They are historic enemies of Iran regardless, right? They don't give a fuck about Iran. So this, on the other hand, this, on the other hand, is like real diplomacy. Like I said, there's an ongoing proxy war happening in Yemen, okay, where there is a genocide happening in Yemen. One side, the rebels are being funded by Iran. The other side that's conducting the genocide is Saudi Arabia using America's weapons. So the fact that this has actually happened like the first step towards brokering some kind of diplomatic agreement, is genuinely insane. This will frustrate every Israeli like hyper militant fascist. Not all Israelis, of course, but certainly the hyper militant ones. They are going to be so mad about this. Israeli security forces in an armored vehicle fired repeatedly into a group of civilians sheltering between a mosque and a clinic after a raid in the West Bank city of Nablus, killing 2 people and wounding 3 others. The post is found. That's also wild. I don't know what's happening here. This is why America needed to blow the pipeline up to sell the gas to the EU. Oil price about to spike. Immediate Israeli response. Breaking. Former Israel Prime Minister Bennett says normalization between Iran and Saudi Arabia is a serious and dangerous development for Israel and is a political victory for Iran. Yes, it is a political victory for Iran. It's also a political victory for, like, you know, just people in general in the Middle East. This is Middle Eastern. This is stability. I know you're intent, but this is far from a proxy war. There's a long history of resistance from Zaidi Yemenis. Iran support is minimal relative to Saudi involvement. Yes, I said one side is doing genocide. I think that's, I think this, I said one side is supporting genocide. The other side is sometimes arming the rebels. I think you capture the disproportionate way of waging war in that situation. Bro, this is crazy. I'm Saudi and I want to remind Chad we don't support the royals. Yeah. Israel said diplomacy is really bad. Can we please not do that? What's interesting is China found itself the go-between after its talks with Saudi Arabia in December and Iran in February. In addition, both Iran and Saudi Arabia want to join BRICS. This is crazy. Good. This is what should have happened a decade ago. China should have had peacekeeping. China should have had peacekeeping troops in Iraq. It's been China's oil for some time. U.S. only gets 5% of our oil, not the Persian Gulf. U.S. has been talking about it in open since 2015. Top G. This is the most interesting piece of news I've seen today. This tops everything else. Like, I wanted to do like more. I mean, this is crazy. Answers to 7 key questions on the Saudi-Iran deal. The regional rivals have agreed to reestablish diplomatic ties. Regional rivals, dude. Like, Saudi Arabia, for the most part, doesn't like Shias to a degree where they like literally don't even like their own Shias. You know what I mean? If you're a Shia and you're Saudi, like, you're still not very safe, okay? Wild. This is great. This is actually one of the first, like, truly, I guess, progressive moves that Saudi Arabia has been a part of. The joint trilateral statement by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the People's Republic of China. Okay, bro, I'm not going to read all this. What are you, crazy? You want me to fucking read this shit? What are you, out of your mind? Okay. The announcement by Iran and Saudi Arabia that they are reestablishing diplomatic ties could lead to a major realignment in the Middle East. Yes, it would. It also represents geopolitical challenge for the United States and a victory for China. Why? Let me put this down real quick. Let me just write this. Let me type this up real quick in the New York Times. Represents a geopolitical challenge for the United States. I wonder why. Under the agreement announced on Friday, Iran and Saudi Arabia will patch up a 7-year split by reviving a security cooperation pact, reopening embassies in each other's countries within 2 months, and resuming trade, investment, and cultural accords. But the rivalry between the two Persian Gulf nations is so deeply rooted in disagreements about religion and politics that simple diplomatic engagement may not be able to overcome them. Here's a look at some of the key questions surrounding the deal. Saudi Arabia and Iran have competed for influence for decades, each seeing itself as not just a regional power, but also a lodestar for the world's 1.9 billion Muslims. Tensions between the two nations grew into an all-out rift in 2016 when protesters in Iran stormed Saudi diplomatic missions after the kingdom's execution of a dissident Shiite cleric. Like I said, Saudi not too fond of the Shiites, the Shias inside of their own borders, or in in the Western world even. In the years since, Saudi Arabia has encouraged a harsh response from the West towards Iran's nuclear program and even established diplomatic back channels to Israel, the strongest anti-Iran force in the Middle East, partly aimed at coordinating ways to confront the threat from Tehran. How the breakthrough announced on Friday would affect Saudi Arabia's participation in Israeli and American efforts to counter Iran was not immediately clear. Like, there's no analysis here that, like, this could be objectively good, and it's only writing it from the perspective of, like, how could this diplomatic agreement be really, really worse for... I love how people say Shia versus Sunni battle, like religion can't be used as a proxy for your class position. This is class warfare. I mean, it's sectarian violence that occurs in every religion. Let's be real. There is definitely... no, I don't think that's like... I don't think that's apt. I'll be real. I think it's not class war. It's just a way to mask, or a separate way to move everything away from the true class war. It's not. It's a deflection, a misdirection, a very successful one. Okay. Yeah, it's like Catholics versus Protestants. How the breakthrough announced on Friday would affect Saudi Arabia's participation in Israeli and American efforts to counter Iran was not immediately clear, but the resumption of diplomatic relations between the two regional powers marked at least a partial thaw in a Cold War that has long shaped the Middle East. What could be the impact across the Middle East? Since they broke off diplomatic relations in 2016, the leaders of Tehran and Saudi Arabia have regularly denounced each other. Yeah, all this stuff is whatever. It's just symbolic posturing. Give me the good shit. Tehran has accused the Saudis of backing terrorist groups such as the Islamic State, which they have, and Saudi Arabia has blasted Iran's support for a network of militias across the Middle East. Interesting. That's interesting. The way that this article is written makes it seem like it's a both sides kind of situation, when, like, just guerrilla versus guerrilla warfare. Don't think too much into it. Anyway, the Saudi-Iranian rivalry has underpinned conflicts across the Middle East, including in Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen. It is played out perhaps more catastrophically in Yemen, where Saudi bombs aimed at reversing, American bombs that were Saudi bought, aimed at reversing gains by Iranian-backed rebels have killed large numbers of civilians. Those rebels have responded by firing increasingly sophisticated missiles and armed drones at Saudi cities and oil facilities, mostly oil facilities, let's be real. That's true. While the breakthrough announced on Friday took many observers by surprise, Saudi and Iranian intelligence chiefs have been meeting in Iraq in recent years to discuss regional security. A more formal diplomatic engagement may provide avenues for the two regional powers to make further progress on cooling regional flashpoints. It's wild that, like, this could be a breaking point potentially for the ongoing and active genocide in Yemen, which Americans not only have funneled weapons into and have supported the side doing the genocide actively, which the New York Times weirdly doesn't mention our involvement in this, as Saudi is our greatest ally in the fucking in the region, right? Other than Israel. And also is talking about this, like, peace brokering agreement, or the first step towards that kind of progress, as a relatively bad thing. That's insane. But hey, let me tell you something. This is how it works. This is how this shit works, baby. This is how this works. The New York Times is, of course, going to defend the military-industrial complex. You know what I mean? They'll criticize the aberrations every now and then when, you know, the American government will go and while they're pulling out of fucking Afghanistan, blow up a NGO worker in Kabul and his entire family melt it down, you know what I mean, and then lie about the process, then the New York Times will do a little bit of coverage on it. But ultimately, they're gonna, you know, when it comes to foreign policy, they're gonna assume the role of the American State Department's mouthpiece. What's China's role? Well, let's take a look at what China's role is. Iran and Saudi Arabia announced the agreement after talks hosted by China. Beijing maintains its ties with both Middle Eastern countries, and the breakthrough highlights its growing political and economic clout in the region, which has long been shaped by the influence of the United States. Xi Jinping, China's leader, visited Riyadh, the Saudi capital, in December, a state visit that is celebrated by Saudi officials who often complain that their American allies are pulling away. China wants stability in the region since they get more than 40% of their energy from the Gulf, and tension between the two threatens their interests, Jonathan Fulton, a non-resident senior fellow for the Middle East programs at the Atlantic Council, said in Washington. Atlantic Council. Regional leaders have also noted their appreciation that China, which maintains a policy of non-interference in other countries' affairs, avoids criticizing their domestic politics, and does not have a history of sending its military to topple unfriendly dictators. This part isn't relevant. Unless you're talking about how, like, they don't fucking they don't set up civil society groups to constantly have like a way to possibly create mass chaos in the country the moment that a form of governance doesn't go your way. Like the moment that, like, I don't know, someone is like, maybe we should nationalize a key industry that Americans have an interest in or Westerners have an interest in. They go, oh, civil society groups, go in there and fuck shit up. Yeah, that's what they mean if they're talking about domestic politics. And most importantly, this part is the very obvious, very clear difference between the way Chinese politics works, the way Chinese global politics works. The announcement also reflects China's desire to play a bigger diplomatic role on the world stage. Beijing has presented what it calls a global security initiative and last month introduced a peace plan for Ukraine. Both the security initiative and the Ukraine proposals have been panned in the West for lacking concrete ideas and ultimately promoting Chinese interests. Yeah, Chinese interests like what? Fucking ending the war? Like what the fuck stupid shit is this? The Middle East is a new security provider. I've never been more happy in my life. The U.S. leaving the region and hopefully never looks back. Have fun, China, lol. I'm sure China's going to manage the region so much better, lol. Dude, Faustini, as a neoliberal, as the resident neoliberal in the chat, I need you, I urge you to check how fucking grossly Islamophobic and orientalizing your fucking sentiment is here, because you make it seem like regional instability in the Middle East is not caused by material realities of war and nonstop fucking, bourgeois interests that are being funneled through the lens of sectarian violence and constant conflict that's going on. So much so that there's literal boots on the ground military warfare happening, and instead instability happening because a bunch of fucking Arabs don't know how to handle themselves. Okay? Straight up. Because you might not even internalize the kind of sentiment that you're expressing, but the ultimate reality is that is being backed by so much Islamophobic and anti-Arab propaganda. You said ending the war like the lithium ore part doesn't matter? No, I suspect that this will still be, I suspect that, there's a lot of padding here. Remember, the way I started the story was, wow, it seems like the Associated Press is covering this positively because in many instances, we just kind of lie. Big countries come in and they broker peace agreements, but they're not real peace agreements, right? I said that. But I was shocked at how positively this is being covered by the Associated Press, which is no friend to China. Is not going to do any fucking propaganda for China. Let's be real. Which is why I am saying that I am, I'm thinking this plays a role in the validity of this deal. I also maintain the position that this is just a first step, and who knows where it will go. You act like China will be better. I think it's great. I wish them all the best is all I'm saying. No, don't be cowardly, okay? Don't be cowardly. You made it seem like the Middle East is unsustainable and unstable no matter what happens. And it's like some some spiritual force that makes it so it makes it such a mess, and not like genuine warfare, like endless colonial exploitation, imperialist exploitation. And like, you use security provider as though it's like a real thing. Obviously it's not. Anyway, okay, what could it mean? News of the deal, particularly Beijing's role in brokering it, alarm foreign policy hawks in Washington. Renewed Iran-Saudi ties as a result of Chinese mediation is a lose-lose-lose for American interests, said Mark Dubowitz, the chief executive of Foundation for Defensive Democracies. Yeah, a Washington-based think tank that supports tough policies towards Iran and China. Yeah, at the behest of defending democracies, of course. I love defending democracies like this. How about you defend American democracy, dipshit? Jesus Christ. He said it showed that Saudi Arabia lacks trust in Washington, that Iran could peel away U.S. allies. But look, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have any tough policy towards Saudi Arabia. Okay? Any smoke that you have for Iran and China could literally be redirected to Saudi Arabia tenfold. Okay? But he doesn't have that smoke for Saudi Arabia. He's like, oh, but that's our ally, but they lack trust in us. I wonder why. Seems like he doesn't care about defending democracy as a principle. And it's simply just a marketing technique. It's like saying that the American government has a Department of Defense and not a Department of Offense. Okay? Because the best defense is a really, really strong and really violent, aggressive offense, I guess. He said it showed that Saudi Arabia's lack of trust in Washington, that Iran could peel away U.S. allies to ease its isolation, and that China is becoming the major domo of Middle Eastern power politics. Once again, same with the One Belt, One Road initiative, same with like Chinese investment happening in Africa. There's a very real problem on the other side that these motherfuckers always fail to recognize. That very real problem is that like China can get away with doing, I guess, partially more favorable loans that aren't as crippling and aren't as like, over-encompassing and as rigid with the conditions that they offer, because America has done the exact opposite. They've been really fucking aggressive, when they're not enslaving entire nations. You are obviously ignorant of what it means to be a Muslim and what it means to be a Shia. The Sunnis, Muslims, don't recognize the Shia as Muslims and hate the Shia for always talking badly about the Prophet's wife and companions, of course, for political reasons. If you want to talk about countries and political stuff, feel free, but don't make up shit about my religion and thousands of people who spout it. What the fuck? Bitch, I'm Sunni. What do you mean? Technically. Motherfucker called me a cracker. You're not, though. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sure you are. Yeah. Also simultaneously said Shia are not Muslims. And hate the Shia for always talking badly about the Prophet's, peace be upon him, wife and companions. Anyway. Okay. Trita Parsi, an executive vice president of the Quincy Institute, a Washington group that supports U.S. Yeah, the Quincy Institute's not bad. I'm surprised that they went to the Quincy Institute. If I'm not mistaken, doesn't Jeffrey Sachs also work with the Quincy Institute and is like routinely on, their people are routinely on Democracy Now! Wow. While many in Washington will view China's emerging role as a mediator in the Middle East as a threat, the reality is that more stable Middle East where Iranians and Saudis aren't at each other's throats also benefits the United States. The White House rejected the idea that China was filling a void left by the United States in the Middle East. We support any effort there to de-escalate tensions in the region, said John Kirby, a spokesman for the NSC. He questioned Iran's commitment to a true rapprochement with a longtime adversary. However, it really does remain to be seen whether Iranians are going to honor their side of the deal. This is not a regime that typically honors its word, so we hope that they do. Yeah, unlike us, a country that literally did not honor its word to Iran. How insane. What an incredible thing to say. Iran literally followed the denuclearization agreement protocols to a T after Donald Trump said, fuck it, YOLO, we're adding more sanctions to the nuclear denuclearization agreement. Even if Iran is following it, I don't give a fuck. That is a psychotic thing to say. You have to literally be just on the opposite side of the truth. Like you have to, your understanding of the world has to be the exact opposite of what the reality is. If you are America and saying, you know, that Iran doesn't follow through on their deals. What could it mean for Israel? Oh boy. The news prompted surprise and anxiety in Israel, which has no formal ties with Iran or Saudi Arabia, even though they have like some, they have good relations with Saudi Arabia, let's be real. But while Israeli leaders see Iran as an enemy and an existential threat, they consider Saudi Arabia a potential partner. Yes, they do. Nationalists operate this way. Perfect example of why American power is bad. Nationalism is bad, folks, even if it's from your country. Yeah. And they had hoped that shared fears of Tehran might help Israel forge ties with Riyadh. Still, Israeli analysts of the Iranian and Gulf affairs said that the deal was not entirely disastrous for Israeli interests. Although it undermines Israeli hopes of forming regional alliance against Iran, it could, perhaps counterintuitively, still allow for greater cooperation between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Despite normalizing ties, Saudi Arabia may continue to view Iran as an adversary and could still consider a closer partnership with Israel, particularly on military and cybersecurity issues, as another way of blunting the threat. Among some Israeli politicians, the announcement provoked introspection about their country's internal divisions. Some said the reestablishment of Saudi-Iranian ties highlighted how domestic turmoil risks distracting the government from more urgent concerns such as Iran. Yeah, they're like, come on, man, we're doing too much like anti-LGBT laws domestically. We're fucking murdering the Palestinians a little too much. We forgot. We dropped the ball. Eyes on the prize, folks. Iran is right there. The nuclear deal was signed when reformists existed. They no longer exist in Iranian politics. No, you're so right, dude. It's actually the reformists' fault. It's actually the Iranian side's fault. You're so right. No, definitely. Yeah. Saudi Arabia and Iran are global leaders of the two largest sects of Islam, with Saudi Arabia considering itself the guardian of Sunnis. Okay, well, excuse me. This is Turkey erasure. We have Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who literally thinks he is the caliphate himself. How dare you? That's kind of fucked up. None of this like Wahhabist shit, you know what I mean? As a Turk, I take offense to that. I mean, our Sultan himself has done so much. Actually, not only that, but literally, if you look at global Islam, if you look at Muslims globally, they literally consider Erdogan to be like the main champion of Islam globally than they fucking do Saudi Arabia. What the fuck? Nobody likes the kingdom. Not its people, but like certainly nobody likes nobody likes Mohammed bin Salman. What the fuck? What the fuck are you saying? Yeah, most Muslims globally have a very positive view of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, unfortunately, and have a not so positive opinion on MBS. I mean, the Wahhabis love him. Yeah, of course they are the only ones, but that does not make up the entirety of global Islam. Are you kidding me? Yeah. Okay, I don't know if Muslims support Erdogan. Yes, dude. Are you kidding me? Yes. Yes. Absolutely, Muslims support Erdogan globally. You guys are fucking bananas if you think that that's not the case. Paint with broad brushes is the only way to comment on a two-stream law. I mean, true. People forget that, like, Indonesia exists. You know what I mean? Like, people forget that, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, there's a much larger global Islamic world. But yeah. Anyway, leaders in Tehran routinely criticize Saudi Arabia's close ties with the United States, accusing the kingdom. I'm surprised that they haven't mentioned the Uyghurs once, by the way, this entire article. Damn, they fucking... That there is no better representation that, like, there is no better demonstration that the Uyghur cultural genocide is complete. Like, it's done. Like, they closed off the fucking re-education camps, and then it's memory hold by the West even. Straight up. I told you this. Once the Associated Press article came out talking about, like, the new Xinjiang, it was done. It was over. That's where it ended. You'll have, like, NatSec liberals in here that fucking constantly bring it up, constantly repeat it. But, like, I'm not saying that, like, the Hanification has been completed or anything like that. But it's very obvious to me that, like, you know, nation states always look to other nation states, and once you can't weaponize it against them, you know, you just move on. What AP article is that? I would like to share it with my libbed up people in my orbit. You can look it up. They did. Okay. Erdogan is most popular in MENA. Survey. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, most popular leader among Arabs. Yeah, 100%. This is, by the way, this triggers Turks when you bring this up because they hate this shit. They hate Erdogan for good reason. This is part of it because, like, all the fundamentalist bullshit that he does and all the way that he, like, presents himself as, like, the neo caliphate. That stuff is very... people get very mad at that shit. I mean, it's also, you know, we also have one of those guys in here. I understand praising China for its diplomacy and being happy about this positive development for everyone in the region, but making an emote for Xi Jinping as he's carrying out a genocide of Uyghur Muslims, base social democrat. You are currently to the right of the New York Times on this issue at this very moment. Think about that. Like, I mean, did they even mention? They had to have mentioned it one time, right? Oh my God. Even the fucking New York Times didn't bring this up. Holy shit. That's crazy. Anyway, obstacles. Leaders in Tehran routinely criticize Saudi Arabia's close ties with the United States, accusing the kingdom of doing the West's bidding in the Middle East, which is true. This is true. Might not like the leaders in Tehran, but this is facts. And Iran, in an effort to enhance its own security and project influence, is heavily invested in building a network to arm militias across the region. Saudi Arabia considers that network a threat not only to its own security, but also the broader regional order. I wonder why. Broader regional order defended by, Western interests, of course. Other areas of stark disagreement include the role of Shiite militias in Iraq and Lebanon, which Iran supports to enhance its regional influence, and Saudi Arabia says weakens those countries. Really interesting that they talk about the Shiite militias in Iraq and Lebanon. Part of what those Shiite militias were doing, at least in Iraq, was quite literally fight against ISIS. Iran has always been a global leader in fighting against Wahhabist fundamentalist terror cells that were created by the United States of America. It's insane that you would consider that to be bad. But of course, I digress. Like, they literally helped America defeat Al-Qaeda. That's crazy. Iran itself is fundamentalist? Of course, dude. Of course. Of course it is. No, they're not. I'm not like a fucking defender of the Iranian government, okay? Shut the fuck up. That ultimately is still irrelevant. It's like talking about how fucking Saudi Arabia is fundamentalist. Like everyone in here is fundamentalist. Israel is fundamentalist. You know what I mean? Like every party involved in this article is literally fundamentalist, okay? They're religious extremists by every fucking understanding of the word, okay? Every single one. Part of the reason why it's like that is because of colonial exploitation. Came here to say my company is one of the orgs affected by SVB, had 40 million in savings, just go poof as of now. Holy shit. Anyway, what could be behind the Saudi move? For decades, Saudi Arabia's foreign policy was relatively predictable, but Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman upended those expectations when he began rising to power in 2015, intervening in the Yemen civil war, cutting ties with neighboring Qatar, and in effect kidnapping Lebanon's prime minister and pushing him to resign. He has recently demonstrated a more pragmatic approach, mending the rift with Qatar, easing tensions with Turkey, and pursuing peace talks in Yemen. The prince's move towards regional reconciliation is partly driven by the challenges he faces at home as he tries to overhaul nearly every aspect of life in Saudi Arabia. His Vision 2030 plan calls for diversifying the oil-dependent economy by attracting tourism and foreign investment, drawing millions of expatriates to the kingdom and turning it into a global hub for business and culture. Calming regional tensions is central to that vision, but it is also driven by his desire to turn Saudi Arabia into a global power and make it less dependent on the United States. That doesn't mean replacing the United States, which still supplies the vast majority of Saudi Arabia's weapons and defensive systems, at least not anytime soon. But the prince has been looking for ways to build deeper ties with other global powers, such as China, India, and Russia. They're like, yeah, we want to do NEOM, dog. That shit needs batteries. I mean, this is great. This is great news. This is wonderful news. Very exciting.